You know, I saw, I believe it was the Attorney General recently made a statement that I'd like to get some clarification from all of you, that there were concerns that some banks were potentially too large to prosecute in terms of their potential effect upon the economy. I do not personally believe that it can be the position of the United States government that any institution should be too large to prosecute. As someone who is quite involved in Title II of Dodd-Frank, putting in place resolution authority and the ability to get both at the management and shareholders of firms, mostly here focusing on prudential standards, safety and soundness. But there is some question as well as we look at BSA AML enforcement. While there are committees put forward 10 cases, these are all cases that have been where there's only been monetary fines. There's not been actually prosecution of an institution. There's not been prosecution of individuals. And I guess what I would want to start with is, the chairman mentioned earlier in his opening remarks, how do we ensure that we have strong BSA, AML compliance standards within these institutions? How do we ensure that we make sure that during times of financial stress, compliance is not being cut back on? And do you each feel we have the appropriate tools, whereas necessary, to move beyond just the fine capacity, but to actually, each of you have got tools to be able to bar individuals from continuing to pursue or bar individuals from being involved in the banking system? And how do we make sure those tools are effectively used? And I'd like to hear from each of you. Briefly, if possible, because I've got a couple more rounds.
Certainly. Thank you, Senator Warner. So I will address this in two ways. I think we do have a number of tools that we have used in the past and that we are intending to use in appropriate cases in the future to ensure that when there are enforcement actions to be taken against institutions and individuals, that we do so and are vigorous in our enforcement efforts. I set out, as I said in my testimony, some of the prior enforcement actions, but I've also said and want to reiterate that one of the objectives of the review that's underway now at FinCEN is to consider ways for FinCEN's enforcement authority to be even more effectively discharged, including looking at ways to take action against individuals, officers, directors, shareholders, partners, whoever it may be, if they are themselves involved in the misconduct.
And is part of that looking at actually having these officers and directors sign off on compliance reports in a stronger way than they do right now?
Well, it's that, as well as, I think, more aggressive action with respect to those individuals, including the possibility of barring them from the industry and other injunctive action. So we're looking at the full range of ways to continue to enforce aggressively, as well as to enhance our enforcement efforts. And I think we have the legal authority to do that. Frankly, it's our intention to ensure that we exercise that authority in the future.
I want to hear from the other gentleman, please.
Thank you, Senator. At the OCC, our job is to make sure that, as a civil enforcement agency, that the banks have effective and adequate BSA AML programs on an ongoing basis within the institutions. We conduct annual assessments of those systems, and if we find deficiencies, it's our policy to demand remedial action. If remedial action is not taken or that it's a serious issue, we will proceed to use the arsenal of both informal enforcement, informal and formal enforcement powers we have administratively. One of the areas that I've focused on since becoming comptroller is really to emphasize the corporate governance aspects of BSA compliance. That's part of the reason why we're developing and will be issuing soon specific guidance on what the expectations are for board and management accountability. And those have also served as important parts of our enforcement orders that we have issued in the last several months. They focus quite in a detailed fashion on the roles and responsibilities of operating management, the board of directors as well.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Senator. I'll start by addressing your first question, which was the comments of the Attorney General yesterday. And I just want to say it's fundamental in this country that everyone is equal before the law. And I think his comments only underscore the need to end too big to fail and the need for the agencies to forcefully implement Title I and Title II as it relates to too big to fail. And just to address that part of your comment. In terms of enforcement, I don't have that much to add. I would just say that you know, we examine for BSA compliance as part of our regular examinations on a 12 to 18-month schedule for all of the institutions that we examine. We have a well worked out, commonly agreed manual, and we have an accelerating series of sanctions. We're all very focused on assuring that those are adequate to the task, and we're particularly focused on enterprise-wide, global risk, you know, sort of risk assessment and risk management mechanisms, compliant mechanisms that address this cross-border issue.
Let me just say before I turn to Senator Reid, just that, and I'll come back to this in the second round, that I also have an enormous concern that the length of time to prosecution and in the amount of potentially illegally and also potentially threatening in terms of terrorist financing, Iran case in point, I want to come back to see how we can intervene even before perhaps an enforcement action needs to be taken so that we don't have this long drag period